Hit the lights!
You've discovered the Halfwatt podcast. We want to educate and entertain by tapping into the most trusted source of new technology, the ones installing and innovating it. You, the tradespeople that build from the ground up. Join us as we talk with industry leaders, veteran contractors, and even some young blood.
Welcome aboard. Welcome aboard. Today's podcast is super special. I have a carpenter that I met up on the hill, and we got in a conversation, and I thought that her story was amazing enough to bring on the podcast and talk about it. So, Isabelle.
Well, hello there.
Hello there.
That's quite the intro. I don't know if I would say it's fascinating, but...
It was fascinating. Otherwise, it was fascinating enough for us to stop and talk at the entrance of this construction site for, I'd say, a good solid hour.
Yeah, fair enough.
And then I got back to my office and sat and I went, no, I have to have you. I have to beg you to come on this podcast. Because I thought that what you had to say was so interesting. First off, you don't see too many women carpenters.
I think we just hit 3% last time I heard.
That's a big number. Not. Why?
Oh, I think there's probably a lot of reasons. And yeah, let's start with the big one. Like, when I went through a pre-apprenticeship program called Oregon Tradeswomen.
All right.
Which was awesome. They took people through, you had to do like physical education to explaining what tools were, and they took you around to a bunch of different trade unions and non-union shops and exposed people to the tools. Yeah, and what it was like and the wages and what the work was like and all this stuff. And it was focused on getting more women into the trades.
And how old were you when you did this?
I was 26, 27.
So it's not a high school program.
No, it's not a high school program.
After a few life-altering events.
Yeah, and it was an age range. There were people there from, there was a few younger people in their like late teens. There were a lot of people like in their mid-20s who had gone to college and maybe started a career and realized it was awful and were getting into the trades to pay off their student loan.
Okay.
And then there were a lot of women who were coming in for a second start. So there were several women who were coming in from, they had been incarcerated and were trying to get their life back on track. And they had been addicted to drugs and gotten clean and were trying to find a career that allowed them to make a living wage and allowed them to take care of their children and gave them health care that wasn't going to immediately turn them away because they came from, because they had been to prison, because they had addiction.
Life.
So, it was very powerful and sometimes heartbreaking to hear somebody say like, I went to prison, I got clean, and all I want to do is find a job that will let me take care of my daughter. Like she's living with my mom or whatever. All I want to do is find a position that'll give me, a living wage. So that's
okay. So
that's
I'm going to bookmark that for a second.
Yeah.
Right. Go ahead. So you've got folks that you met in this program, and I've hit on this before. You screw up and go to prison, you're forever marked as a whatever they brand you as. It takes forever to work out of that. You're not going to go work. You're not going to go to the bank. There's places that are not going to hire folks right off the bat. But in the trades, that's not necessarily the case.
Right.
So it allows you to do exactly what going to prison is supposed to do. Rehabilitates you so that you can come back and be a productive member of society. Not be branded for the rest of your life that you somehow made this mistake at 18 that you should pay for until you're 98, correct?
Exactly. And it's, and like obviously there's some places that you're not going to be able to work, right? Right. Obviously.
Right, obviously.
But like, if we want people to, if we believe that people can be better, if we believe that people can be part of the community, like, I think it's such a beautiful thing that the trades let people do that.
I do too.
And it's rough,
right.
But
you mean to say being a carpenter isn't easy?
I mean...
Wax eloquent. How hard is it?
Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's not. No, I mean, I think it's a great job. Anyway, we were talking about why there weren't many women in the trades.
Let's go back to that because I pulled you off to the side. So, but I wanted to make that point.
Yeah.
So you were going through this program and they introduced you to that, but that's not what you went to college.
Yeah, I did.
How'd that work out?
I come from smart parents and I did the thing that was supposed to be the smart thing, which is go to college, and I did it for a year, and it was terrible for me.
So you didn't like college?
No, it was... I am not good at school. I love to learn. I love classes. I love all this stuff. Like, I constantly listening to books and... talking to people and trying to learn as much as I can about whatever random rabbit hole you go down. But school wasn't for me. Like I couldn't sit still that long. I couldn't concentrate for that long. I'm extremely dyslexic, so it didn't. You'd get these textbooks and you're like, I want that knowledge, but there is no way I'm reading 30 pages of that.
Wow. So is that hard? Dyslexia is that hard to deal with? I don't have it, so I don't know. I know people who have it, but I've never experienced it myself.
Yeah, it's hard in school. It's hard if you're doing the basic route, but you learn to cope. It's just that the coping mechanisms don't necessarily translate to the education. So because I was listening to books constantly and going to the library as a kid and grabbing stacks of audiobooks and bringing them home, like I have a good understanding of sentence structure and all this stuff, and I know how sentences are supposed to flow, and I can make it work that way in terms of reading. But there's things I can't read. I can't read poetry. I can't read menus and stuff.
I can't read poetry.
Right.
Either.
Well, because they don't follow the rules. Because my brain knows what's supposed to come next.
Right.
And then you get something and they throw that supposed to out the window. I'm like, I don't know what this is. This is gibberish. So after college was not great.
And said, I'm not going to do this. Then
what? I went to a community college and decided that I wanted to get into firefighting.
Okay.
So I got my EMT basics license and I worked for an ambulance company for a year. And it was inter-facility transport. I did a little bit of like ambulance work, but mostly it was transporting people, and it was awful. I was working 12-hour night shifts. I was working alone. I was getting like 20 cents over minimum wage.
Really?
Yes.
So you go through all that training in your life. You mean you
EMT basic. Lives. I got it done in like 6 months. I did an accelerated one. But that wasn't the end goal, so I put up with it.
Okay.
And then I was in school. I went back to school to do the paramedics license and then eventually do the firefighting. Because, in the city area, most firefighters are paramedics because you're just running medical calls all the time. And when I started school, my mom passed away really suddenly.
Oh.
Yeah, it was... And I just... Yeah. So my dad took it really tough, and I was really stressed, and I ended up flunking out that semester.
Of the EMT.
Yeah.
Going to firefighters.
Yeah, I did it for a while, and I flunked out, and, I got a retail job to make ends meet, and eventually I think my roommate got tired of listening to me complain about working in retail and working with customers. And I will say, one of the beautiful things about working construction is that if somebody swears at you, you can swear right back.
Right.
Can't do that in retail.
No.
Yeah.
No, they frown on that.
Right. So
you can do it once.
Yeah, right.
It's showing you the door.
Yeah. No, so my friend was like, check out Oregon Tradeswomen. Mm-hmm. And I went, and it clicked. It was awesome. And for them, what they said was, look, people get into the trades. I said, it's the FBI, fathers, brothers, and in-laws.
Oh, really? I've never heard that.
Yeah.
That is, I'm writing that down.
Yeah, fathers, brothers, in-laws. So
that's true. It's true in our industry. I get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of it is you don't necessarily either think about your daughter going that path or want her to. And I've had discussions with a coworker who, early on, he said it was really hard. He was like, he didn't want his daughter to work construction. He worked his job so she wouldn't have to. And, at one point, because she's interested, I think she might do it eventually. But, one of our old bosses was like, oh, when she turns 18, when she's ready to get in the trades, like, you should have her come work with us. She can work with, come to our company, work on a crew. And my foreman he's like, Joe, she can't come work for us. And he's like, well, why not? He's like, if my daughter worked on this job site, I would have to follow her around all day beating people up.
Do you want to say the company you work for?
Oh,
you can plug it if you like.
I look for a bigger general contractor. Yeah, which is a first for me. I've been mostly with like smaller. I've only third company I've worked for. So I've been like smaller or medium sized.
So you went through the program.
Subs. Yeah.
You went through the apprenticeship. So then that sort of turns you on to the apprenticeship.
Yeah. So I went to a bunch of places and I was looking. I was like, okay, I either want to do electrician or I want to do carpentry. I know. Electrician would have been the smarter choice.
Not necessarily. Obviously this is working for you.
Yeah. No,
and there's nothing stopping you from getting your electrical license if you decide to.
Yeah. It's a long program.
It is a long program.
I did go carpentry because in the end, as much as I thought electrician would be a better career, I wanted the skills of a carpenter.
Yeah. So, and there was a reason for that.
Yeah.
And you're welcome to say why.
Yeah. No, I mean because my dad and my uncle is a general contractor and he and my dad like built the house I grew up on.
There you go.
And my mom was a brilliant woodworker. Yep. She did a mastery in woodworking program with a guy local here, Gary, who writes for like fine woodworking and stuff. And she just made beautiful furniture, like hand dovetailed all this stuff and did all the built-in furniture, all this cabinetry, all these beautiful pieces of furniture. And when I was looking, at the different trades, I was like, I want to be able to do that.
Right.
Like, I want to build my own house. I want to build the furniture in it. I want to know how to do this stuff. And as it happens, commercial construction does not involve a lot of dovetailing hardwoods. Yeah.
I noticed when I was on the construction site, I didn't see hardly any wood.
I know. Well, they say once wood, always wood. So we got all the steel stud and all this
everything. I was like, well, there's no wood here, but okay.
Nope. No, well, especially in hospitals.
Especially in hospitals,
it's it's taboo. There's no wood anywhere. Yeah. So I went carpentry, and it's been really good to me.
Yeah.
It's been rough at times, and it was definitely an adjustment. But
so when you got into your first job, which was a ma and pa type thing, or
it was. I was mostly doing doors and millwork.
Okay, so that's wood.
Yeah, I think I lucked out. I know I lucked out. I got into the finish side of commercial construction. That's cool. Yeah, so it is kind of as close as woodworking as you can get, while still, I'm a union carpenter, and that's where the money is for me is commercial stuff. As much as like I would love to go off to a little shop and do bespoke rocking chairs and make this lovely stuff, and then I'm just like, that ain't paying the bills. So doors and hardware it is. But if you ever have a door you need installed, I can knock that.
You got
shit
that.
Out. Sorry, can we swear on the
Yes.
podcast? Okay.
You just did.
Okay. Oh, I know, but I don't want to be like rude.
No, I'm sure it's going to be an explicit podcast.
Okay. I don't want to hurt your delicate sensibilities.
Oh God, yes, especially mine. So you do the ma and pa, you do the finished carpentry work.
Yeah.
And you don't have any problems. You don't have to beat anybody up. What happens after that? Did you just say, I got to go do something that pays better or different skill sets or?
No, they actually were good. They actually paid me $1 above scale.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And you're union at that time, so you were protected by the union and
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. It was I'm trying to think. I actually don't talk much about what it's like being a woman in construction.
All right. Hence the reason you were here.
I know. Well, and the reason I think is like, it feels like people really, they have an answer they want you to give. Like
Really?
they haven't, yeah, I think they either expect you to say it was really difficult and it was really misogynistic and patronizing and it was so hard and you overcame all this stuff. Or they want you to be like, no, like, you make it on your own. Like, they treat you just like they would the boys. And if you can't hack it, it's, it's your own fault. And, like, neither of those things are necessarily true. Like,
so it was just the same. They treated you the same as they would a guy on the job? I mean, I'm not saying the other employees. I mean, how was it different for you? So if I was a woman and listening to this podcast and I want to come into the trade, what are they going to expect? Are they going to get water balloons thrown at them? What?
No, but I remember, so my very first job, I got hired. I went to talk to the owner to get my tools and everything. And the owner's wife, she owned it as well. So it was, a couple who owned the business. And I was in, work pants and a men's work shirt buttoned all the way up and all this stuff. And she walks me out the car. She's like, I just want to tell you, like, this is a really good, we work with a lot of great guys and everybody's really lovely here. And if everybody gives you any trouble, like, let me know. And she's like, but we have a lot of good married men working here. And she stops and you're like, and we want to keep it that way.
You got to be kidding me. Oh, my God.
So that was my first exposure. And
welcome here. Don't steal any of the married men.
Yeah, she was like, listen, don't be a hussy.
God, dang.
And I was like,
that's
duly
hardcore.
noted.
Duly.
And
you didn't throat punch her, right?
No, I don't actually think I told anybody about that for a good 6 months. Like, I just like
that would be hard to. If I was in your shoes, I would swallow hard and go, oh, okay. Why would you think that?
Yeah, and it's I can't remember. I think it was. I want to say it was Marcus Aurelius or one of the Stoic dudes who said it. They're like, listen, life is either absurd or it's a tragedy. And so I think I'd rather be on the absurd side. So it is funny. At the time I was like, I don't know how to think about this.
Yeah, I don't
and now
blame
it's
you.
funny. And I think that's generally how a lot of stuff like that goes, is like, for me at least, it's a little hard or very hard in the moment. And then after a little while, you're like, that was so stupid. Like, no, you're like, that was fucked up. This is so funny. And you have to find the right person to tell it to, because if you tell it to the wrong person, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. That's like awful. Yeah. And you're like, no, like it's a joke. Like
the fact that you can brush that off the way that you just did is I think why I wanted to talk to you.
Yeah.
Because you're not offended by what she did, but you were kind of flabbergasted.
Yeah.
And then you just picked up your tools and went to work.
I was like, oh, that was different.
Awkward. Okay.
Yeah. No, so the first company, there ended up, I left. There was, after a couple of years, but there was I would say a foreman. I didn't pick up on it for a long time. Afterwards, my coworkers were like, oh yeah, no, he's been hung up on you forever. Right. And it got a little creepy towards the end, and probably time for me to exit that situation.
So did he, like, I don't want you to get in trouble, but did he make a pass or something, or?
No, I'm pretty good with the wall. Like, you can like keep people at arm's length, and like shut stuff down really nicely. You just never give anybody the wiggle room. Like, they'll try like, oh, do you like this band? I love this band. I was like, oh, never heard of it. And they're like, oh, well, this and this is like, oh, that's so interesting.
You've never heard
I
of the
hope you
Rolling
like that.
Stones?
You're like, nope, never heard of it.
No,
They're
who are
great.
they?
I have, I'm going to this concert later. And you're like, oh, I'm sure you'll have a great time. And just like shutting it down. But he was saying stuff to the other guys, and I think at one point he was like, oh man, no, I could make that girl a hobosexual.
Oh.
And you're like, what do you mean? And they're like, she's looking for like cheap rent. Like, I'm building this house. Like, I bet I could get her to like sleep with me in exchange for free rent.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
So
wow.
I wasn't there.
Wow.
So my coworkers were like, no, I think he was serious. I like to be like, who knows if he was serious? Maybe, maybe not. Either way, this other company is looking to hire me.
Look at this.
So let's make a graceful exit.
Nice.
I will say the insulting thing about that, I'm just like, my rent at the time was like $750 a month. Okay, if I was gonna be a gold digger, I would like to think that I would cost a little more than $750 a month. Like, not throwing any shade. I'm just like, if that was my end game, like come on. Come on, if I was a gold digger, let's be real. Like, I wouldn't be going for construction workers.
I'm thinking of the Kanye West song now.
Which one?
The gold.
Oh,
yeah. That's you made me laugh. I had to take my glasses off. Shit. Oh, that was funny. Well, okay, so that didn't work.
It worked for a long time.
I mean, that didn't work. The guy was unsuccessful and.
Oh, correct.
Roping
yes.
you into working.
No. That was never an option.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. So that was I'll take the good things I learned and never see you again. And that was excellent for me.
So then you changed companies.
I changed companies.
Did you go to another mom and pop, or did you go to something bigger?
No, I went to a larger one. And it was great. It was more finish work. I ended up, I'm trying to think. I worked for them for a while. I ended up needing to get surgery, and so I was out for a few months. And then I had an old coworker working for this general, and he's like, hey, I think you would be an awesome fit for the hospital.
Oh, cool. Okay.
I think you would really like the healthcare side, and I think you'd be a great fit. And so I came over, and it's a tough transition going to work in the healthcare side of things.
Yeah, it's a different. So for those who don't know, hospitals have as many bathrooms as hotels.
Oh, it's glorious.
So there's a lot of walls, a lot of. I mean, you cover it. I mean, you would probably know it better than I would.
No, the bathroom thing is funny because when anybody who's ever worked in the trades and shared a porta-john with 300 other men knows the glory of a clean bathroom. Yeah, no, my introductory tour of the job was like, oh, and there's a bathroom over here, and there's a great bathroom on the first floor where nobody ever goes. He's like, you wouldn't believe it. They're so clean, and there's running water. And I was
so no matter what building you're working on the hill, you have all
there's all these clean bathrooms. Like, I'm not either like sharing it with 3 other men or going into like the bright pink one with the special like padlock. Yeah.
So you come up to work in the healthcare construction side of the house. This is a pretty good sized company.
Yeah.
Well known, I'd say. Now you're dealing with metal mostly.
Yeah, there's a lot of metal. I think we're going to get some self-performance work coming, which I'm excited about.
What does that mean?
So for the general contractor, a lot of what they're doing is contracting out to subs, and so the contractors that we have are really kind of more site services.
Okay.
So we jump in and fill in where there's stuff that's needed, like, oh, we need this concrete chipped up or this curb poured, or we've got this stuff that needs to be finished, or someone slacked on this and we need to go fix it up, right?
Okay. And you do all that kind of work. So you do. It's not just that you're obviously not working with wood, but you don't just work with wood. You don't just put metal studs up.
Right.
What things do? What does a carpenter do? You lay carpet? It's in the name.
I have had somebody be very confused about that. So you lay floors? And I'm like, oh, buddy.
It's a different job, I'm afraid. You chose poorly.
That's kind of cute. But
so what else do you do?
So now that I'm working for the GC, and that's one of the reasons it's a really difficult switch. So before, I was doing mostly very large scale industrial projects. I did, the PDX and the RITs and a lot of colleges and schools like that. Okay. And it is, how well can you do this job? How quickly can you do it? And I love that. Like, the production is great. Getting it nailed down, seeing how can I get this down, and so I'm installing this in 7 minutes instead of like 11 minutes. So
you do what the electricians, because production electricians do the same thing. If they're going to start to work in a house, or they're going to be on that project for the whole time, because electricians get on a site and hardly ever leave.
Yeah.
So it's like, we're gonna do all the, we're gonna pull all our service loops today, and they pull all the wire, or they bend all the conduit, or whatever they're doing, and they're trying to better their time.
Yeah.
And get better at it, and better, you do it once instead of twice, and you're doing the same thing as a carpenter.
Absolutely. Okay. And that's fun, and you get all these perfect little tools. Like, do I have the exact right tool to do this right job, and is it laid out right, and how do I get faster and faster and faster? And it gets those, like, all the crazies in your brain all get pin focused on this one little task, and then you just try to fly.
Yep. And are you competing against yourself as far as how well you did, like the month before, or the day before, or are you competing against other?
Both.
Yeah.
Like,
I would compete against other electricians and say,
yeah,
or other carpenters in your case, and go, oh well, I did this in 30 minutes and it's right.
Yeah. No, because anytime there's a new person on site and you're like, oh no, that was really clever. They did that really well. You start like scheming. You're like, okay, how do I up this? How do I get better? How do I get faster?
Nice.
And like, I need to do this, that. So, a little bit of healthy competition.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No, not at all. And when I was an apprentice, it was great because my bosses would pit me up against another apprentice. They'd be like, oh, well, I don't know if you hear, but Doug installed 38 doors today. And I was like, bastard. And then they'd be saying, over there, and he'd be like, oh, Doug, well, Isabelle and I, like, we do brackets, we got like 3 floors done. And Doug was like,
yeah, that's perfect.
So
it
was
perfect.
A little bit of friendly competition between apprentices. It works out. So I went from like that, the production side, and also working for a subcontractor where, like, I am not a scofflaw, but there's some rules that you think are dumb. And when you're a subcontractor, you're like, I'm going to see how long I can get away with not following the dumb rules until someone comes by and makes me. And, when the word comes out on a big job site, they're like, oh, safety guy's coming by. Like, a safety guy is on the 2nd floor. He's coming up. You should probably do this, that, and the other. And they go, oh, yep. And
change
you get
all
the,
your PPE.
You get the vest on, you put away what you're not supposed to be using, and you're like, they walk by and you're like, oh, hi. And
compliant.
I'm
super compliant and stuff.
Right, and they got their little iPad and they're like, yep, check. And as soon as they're gone, you're like, okay, I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want.
Thank God.
But now I'm working for the general.
Yeah. Now you are setting the safety standards.
I am setting the safety standards. And as much as I was once dubbed the PPE princess, like, oof, yeah, there's some, there's a rule we're not supposed to use knives unless we unless it's like signed off by a supervisor. I don't run a podcast, so I'm not going to say that I use knives whenever, because I'm a construction worker and knives get the job done. But that might be a very difficult rule to be compliant with.
I got it, yeah.
Yeah, so there's And the other thing is going from super fast pace to we are in a hospital.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to do this small remodel and you're going to do all of this paperwork and you're going to keep it very clean.
Right.
And you're going to be very precise, and there's going to be times when you cannot go. You got to be quiet. We were working under a research facility, and they're like, well, you can only work or make noises from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays, because that's when it's least disruptive for the mice.
Exactly. That is a huge deal. That is a huge deal. Hey, Mike here. I just want to do a quick shout out to all of our listeners. Now, listen, it's been a wonderful couple of months getting the show moving, and we have seen a ton of growth, right? You guys are doing your part. People are downloading. You're telling people. That's super important to get this podcast on the map, okay? We've got good lineup of folks coming in the studio, and the biggest thing that I want you to know is that I want to hear from you. You, the person listening to this. All right? You want to be a part of this show? You want to talk about tips and tricks? You want to talk about things that you've learned in the trade? You want to talk about how this has changed your life? You want to talk about stuff like that? Send me an email, okay? It's halfwattpod@gmail.com. And I'm interested in hearing about people who are in the union and people who are not in the union and people who are technicians and people who do alarm work and people who do camera access work, stuff like that. It doesn't just have to be fire alarm monkeys. It could be anybody. All right? So let's talk about this so that people can realize that this is a career that will change their life.
I'm sorry. You want me to do concrete work and get it done
and not
only
making
between
any noise.
6 hours a week?
Yeah.
And the other time I'm like, okay, what shit are these scientists doing that they know what's least disruptive to the mice? Are you communicating? Is there some weird brain transfer going
There's
on?
There's a lot. So some of those. So my wife worked in DCM for a while, and we didn't know how it was going to work out, and she wound up not being able to do it for health reasons. It just became when you do a lot of repetition work and you're having issues like that.
No,
it just becomes more painful than anything else. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So she enlightened me on a lot of the rules with that. And I've had the barrier training where you go in and have to work around specific mice. Some of those mice cost into thousands of dollars.
I know.
And they are genetically designed so that they can do some sort of test with them or whatever research. Mm-hmm. And you clap your hands loud and they die. So you're like, oh my God. So there's all these special precautions about, because if a researcher has all this research into this animal, and their PhDs hanging on that, or their research is hanging on that, and then unbeknownst to them,
right,
the concrete pours do something and wind up affecting the can. It's a huge thing.
Yeah, we're down there. We get the concrete pour done. We're all clapping like, woo, get it done. Mice just dropping dead everywhere.
I'm telling you, we in the fire alarm world, I cannot set off signals, horns and strobes and or speakers, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And when I worked at OSU on their system, they flat out told us, well, you could do this on this time, and we want you to not do them in the basement. And when you do them in the basement, we want you to bump them, just make sure everything's ready to go, tap them, make sure they work, and that's it, to eliminate, so that we're not killing any of their animals. And I'm like, you're the client. I'll do whatever you want. Doesn't matter to me. You want me to be here Saturday at 3 to do it, that's what I'll do.
Yeah.
But so with you and doing this kind of job, here you're going from, and I've seen the PDX world, because I worked there for performance. That's a big gig. And you're right. They also move kind of slow too, because everything's got to be perfectly and inspected right. Mm-hmm. So now you get to a hospital, and my guess is it moves at a snail's pace as compared.
Right. It is much slower. And for a carpenter, I would say there's no glory in it. If you're building something like PDX, or you're doing these big hotels, you're making these things that are changing how the city looks, you get done with the day and you're like, I built this stuff. I can go through the city and be like, I built that. Like, that was all me.
That's totes me.
Yeah, that's totes me. Like, oh my God, I'm awesome.
Oh my God, I
Yes.
built that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you can tell other people in the trades, oh no, I worked on that project. I did that project. I did this, that. And they're like, oh my gosh, that was such a crazy one.
Yeah.
And you come here and you're doing these tiny little projects. And you're, I'm keeping containments clean. I'm putting up containment panels. I'm keeping negative air. Yeah.
So in a hospital, and if you get the dust out of the construction site, on the dust is a fungus called aspergillus. If a patient who is immune compromised breathes in aspergillus, it grows in their lungs.
Yeah.
And can get in their body. And I know this from personal reasons because my youngest kid died of it.
Oh
I mean,
gosh.
she had cancer.
Yeah.
She had leukemia. We did all the bone marrow stuff, all that crap. But what caught her was aspergillus in a hospital in one of the buildings up there. And they did nothing wrong. We had a bout of it before at another hospital. So they give you what they call amphotericin or amphotericin to kill the aspergillus, but your body's immune system can't do anything with it because you don't have an immune system. So as your immune system comes back, then if you win the battle, you win the whole thing. So like in Kohler and the bone marrow transplant, that's where when this people's immune systems, they go through TBI, they get a completely wiped immune system. They're so vulnerable. And it's not just aspergillus. It could be a cold. It could be a rhinosinusitis virus or whatever, or COVID. So, but the dust and the dust control is huge.
Yeah.
And so now you're putting up barriers. So tell the folks what a barrier is.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's different types. We do plastic ones, but generally they're these big panels. We go up, we put them up, we get it all sealed, no air coming in or out, and you get, you have special monitors that are checking if you have negative air pressure, and we vent usually outside the building, and the goal is to create a vacuum. So we're sucking all of the air from the hospital into the job site, and none of that air is getting out.
Perfect.
So that's the goal.
And you get sticky mats. I love the sticky mats.
Sticky mats. We have anterooms where people are vacuuming themselves off. And, so a lot of people don't want to do the healthcare work. I think it works really, really well if you can find purpose in something other than building.
Okay.
So if I still love to build, and I still build things, and I have a wood shop, and
you have your own personal wood shop.
I got my own personal wood shop, and I still get to do that stuff. And I go out to different jobs and
I noticed you still have
done.
all your fingers. So
I do. Yeah, that is my goal, is to get through construction with all of the digits.
All of the digits.
I don't want 5 Finger to be my nickname. So we're working on that one. So far, so good. Yeah,
but so you said that the construction, that's a part of it, but what else?
It's part of it, but if you can find, because everyone wants to find meaning in the work. A lot of the guys find meaning in like, I've done this, I've accomplished this, I've built this today. And I think if you're going to do a hospital, you need to be able to find some meaning in like, I kept this containment pristine. I helped this patient who was lost on the grounds. Because I went and saw you one day. I ran into you. I was working on a fire alarm problem. Yeah.
And we talked. And then I went up there the next day to go to employee occupational health or something to get a shot, and ran into you again. And you were guiding a patient. This is where I saw you. I went, oh, damn, there she is again. Yeah. Serendipitous. So you were actually doing OHSU's work, essentially. Yeah. Guiding.
You help people who are lost, and I think today it was somebody's motorcycle, something happened with it, so I was helping them push it up that...
Were you really?
Yeah, push it up that... Well, because he's kind of like, I think she was like his pregnant wife, and she was trying to help push him, and we were grabbing coffee, and I was like, do you need a hand with that?
Sort of
and she was like, yes. And I got up there and we pushed the motorcycle up the hill, but I think you need to find some, because nobody's ever going to be like, oh, thank you so much for keeping the containment clean. Thank you for mopping the floor so we don't have footprints, or making sure everybody's wearing booties when they walk out. Like, that's, that's expected, but you need to be able to find something like, I know that I did this to keep people safe and healthy and, helped people get to their appointment on time or whatever it is. So if you can find some sense of accomplishment in that, healthcare can be a great place. And if you can't, then you can't. It's not a bad thing. There's so many job sites where they just need somebody who's like, I just want to get down there and I want to get as many framing, linear feet of frames up as humanly possible. I'm like, yeah, get it. Or I don't like concrete, but people are like, I just want to be out there pouring concrete. I want to dig those ditches and build those forms. I want to be out there and whatever you're doing, getting full floor poured at once, getting a floor up every week. That's awesome.
So the folks building the new building, or that kind of might be their more, because it seems like those guys are pretty gung ho.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the ones who last are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good way. So in your world, what you do with mitigation, and I mean, it's not all mitigation, but that's a part of what you're doing.
Yeah.
And it does move at a snail's pace, and you have to move at which kids, this is why hospitals are expensive to run, expensive to maintain. I'm going to give a little bit of background. They used to do these small. Go ahead. They used to do these small little remodels where they would leave, the old stuff in place, and then we would have problems with it. And I was up there when Hoffman or Anderson or both started gutting entire floors. This was back when I worked there the first time, and they would first time I saw it, it was astounding. Like, you just walked up and the entire floor was gutted. Everything was gone. Piping, wires. It was just cement. And then they were doing all of the earthquake bracing on the end of A wing, the one wall up there. And then this is in South Hospital. And then they would move across and they would add all this cement. And I just kind of watched it because I was just sort of looking at it. It wasn't my gig. I just was kind of.
It's cool.
Yeah, you'd go in and see there was a superintendent that I was really fond of. He was a lot of fun. So I would watch this thing go together, and then you get done with this whole project, and it's beautiful. And so you walk out in the hall, and it's 1956, and you go into the suite, and it's 1990, and it's just entirely. It's like, what? And of course, on the hill, the next building was built in 14, and then the one at 1914.
It's a wild campus.
Yeah, it's wild. You get such a variety of. So I could see if you're working at, when I met you, you're at Multnomah Pavilion, which is was one of the original buildings. So what is it like to strip that thing down and look at the guts of what is going on?
Freaking cool.
That's
one of the cool things about working in the hospital. It's slow and it can get, a little bit grating, where you're like, I just want to put my hands on the tools and build some stuff. But then you go in these places and you're like, there's glass pipes running through these buildings, and there's vats of acid, and there's, there's restraints in the floors from when it was
a
psychiatric hospital and stuff like that. And, you're holding the door for the body boys as they go into the research, and you're like, this is, I think one of the coolest parts of being in construction, is getting to go in all these weird places and these facilities, these buildings, these campuses, whatever they are, power plants and mills and even commercial buildings. You might only ever see 60% of it. There's this whole other world that's happening, and you get to go, and it's cool. Yeah. It is really cool.
The Pyrex pipes. They told me about that when I first worked there. I said, there's glass pipes. Because, they're like Pyrex.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why? Because acids. We have a lot of acids. And it just eats right through the pipe. So we won't eat through Pyrex. And sure enough, I was like, And you could see the fluid going through it. You're like, huh, well, that's wild. You don't ever, I've never seen Pyrex pipes before in my life.
No,
until I
and
worked in a research facility.
Desperately want to like build myself a house and just have like exposed glass pipes running everywhere. Although I will say, you do with the glass, you do get to see how like nasty those things actually get, and you're like, oh.
Especially the P traps. You're like, ooh,
right?
That's not fun.
A little bit of plausible deniability is nice. So it's cool, and I like, working around the scientists and kind of seeing what's happening. And
so you've worked all over the campus. Then.
Yeah,
it's not just like the healthcare side. You've worked research and
the research and kind of the office-y clinics, and I've been out. I've been helping out with a project where they're doing like a linear accelerator.
Oh yeah. In CRR.
No, it's in Beaverton, I think.
Okay.
So it's it's still OHSU, but like a different campus, and if you're someone who loves to learn, that's a great place to be. It'll send you down so many rabbit holes.
Oh my gosh.
When I had to do MRI training, I was like, what the fuck are these dudes? I'm like, who's coming up with this shit? Like, they're like, oh, here's all the ways you can die, and here's the story of this like guy who got like flung in and crumpled up and crushed. So
Did you
don't
see
do that.
The picture of the bed up against the whole bed? It's a whole hospital bed up against the dome.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, and we have this emergency release, and they show this big button. But if you push this, all this like gases vent to the ceiling, and if you're near those vents, then like you'll, burn your lungs inhaling this stuff.
When they quench it. So for the listeners, if you have an MRI. And these are 1.5 Tesla MRIs. These are not. These are like diagnostic MRIs you would go through if you were a patient. If you have the unmitigated gall to carry a tank of oxygen in there, it'll fly into the machine. And sometimes the only way they can get it is to quench it. So they have to actually stop the liquid helium from cooling the magnet.
And that's one thing I didn't
vents out.
know is that those things are always on 24/7, and it's so cool. And then you see, because I would never think like, oh, the hospital bought this new piece of equipment. Cool. Like they spent spent like $3 million on this equipment. You're like, great. And it's like, no, they've got to rebuild this place just to get that piece of machinery in there. Yeah. And, we got like foot thick concrete walls or these special pads and divots. And there's so much that goes into it. It's
the cancer section in Kohler. I've done a lot of work on the machines because we have a lot of fire stuff in there.
Oh, I'm sure.
And one time we had two of these machines that kept going in and out of trouble. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? So I have a background in radio stuff, and I'm like, okay, I'll see if I can't build a Faraday cage for one of these machines, because that's what you would do.
Yes.
You would put a cage around it, and it would shunt the RF. So cool. But I don't know anything about this machine, so I start to ask the physiologist who comes over, and he goes, a Faraday cage. He goes, I don't think that's going to work in this application. And I'm like, well, I'm kind of limited on what I can do. So he goes, well, why don't you, you should probably call the technician. So I get a hold of Varian, and I get a hold of the technician, who calls me, and he's a former Navy guy. So I said, hey, I'm in the Navy too. And he goes, oh, I was an ET. I said, I'm an EW. Okay. And so I said, so this is my problem. He goes, oh, what room? I told him. He goes, Faraday cage. He goes, man, we're making neutrons in there. You got to be kidding me. He goes, there's no Faraday cage. He says, if you're not bore-sighted with that machine when it's on, because that's why the operators are bore-sighted with the machine. So if you look at the machine, the operators that are outside the 16-inch thick walls they're in the area of least radiation. Yeah. He goes, everything else in there is getting neutrons. And then I talked to the electricians, the guys from Dyna, and they're going, oh yeah, none of the conduits are straight. All the conduits have to be bent a certain way so that, and they're all in metal or like an MRI, it's all in that, enclosed with that steel and copper. But in these rooms where they're doing cancer treatments, like by the time these guys got done teaching me, my jaw hit the floor. Yeah. And I said, okay, so there's really nothing I can do. He goes, yeah, you cannot put them there. He goes, why they're there? Why? Because if you go to the other machine, they're they're bore-sided with the machine. Right. He goes, oddly enough, all my electronics are bore-sided with the emitters. And so this guy taught me so much in like 20 minutes. And I'm just like you. I'm just like sucking it all up going.
Right.
Then I'm going to tell all my buddies, you know what this thing does? It makes neutrons, man.
Right. Dude, when I learned about like saturation diving and that kind of construction, I was like, oh my God. Like everybody met. I was like, tell me more. So saturation divers, I had a welding instructor when I was going through the apprenticeship who was a saturation diver. So when you're working really deep in the ocean, so it's part of the, part of the pile bucks, I think, but you got the divers, the bridge builders, pile bucks. Oh, yeah. Divers are part of the pile bucks.
Okay. I've never heard that term before.
Yeah. So the pile drivers, so you get divers, and, normally divers are, dive down and you do your work.
So you can be a diver and a carpenter?
Yeah.
I mean, I know you can be a diver.
Yeah, no. So for the
there's a whole discipline of carpentry that just involves diving.
The divers are in the carpenters union. At
I
least
did not
in this
know
area.
that.
Yeah, neither did I. I was tempting. I was like, I want to.
Damn straight,
I have no
that's
diving experience, but I was like, yeah, I'd do that.
No kidding.
So the saturation divers, instead of having all of that decompression time, if you've got to work really far down under the water, a lot of it's pipeline stuff. They'll have like on a ship or on like an oil rig or something, they'll have a pressurized capsule. Oh, so you'll have your workers go on this little pressurized capsule, get down. Is it down or up to pressure? Oh, one of the two.
Down. The pressure goes up.
Right. Yeah, I'm just a carpenter.
No, I get
so they get down to pressure, and it can take like 7 days or whatever. Then they have a little bell, a dive bell that'll connect.
Oh, so they stay
take
there.
them out. And it'll bring them down to the water, and they'll work, and they'll come back up. And the instructor I had, I think he said the longest he stayed at pressure was something like 47 days.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah. But it's crazy because you're living on the ship in this tiny capsule, and the air is like trimix, whatever. So there's a lot of helium in there. So the whole time you're talking about helium voice. There's just.
I never would have known that.
Fascinating.
I knew that from the military because the SEALs do that kind of stuff, and I'm a kind of nut to read all that. So I understand what you're talking about. I had no idea that the civilians were doing that. But that totally makes sense because you don't have to go through decompression. You just drop down, do your work, come back up, stay at the same pressure.
And
so they're living for 47 days or whatever.
For different lengths of time, but
at the bottom of the ocean pressure.
Yeah.
Wow. And you make a ton of money. Which is totes helpful.
Right. Yeah. Fascinating work. But no, so same, like you learn about these weird little things and you go down that rabbit hole, and then all of a sudden I'm telling everybody, like, have you heard of saturation divers? Like,
have you heard of free diving? Have you ever seen there's a show on Netflix. Do you watch television?
I do on occasion, yes.
You don't seem like the kind that sits in front of the TV.
I'm not a complete Luddite.
So there's this show on free diving. I think it was on Netflix. It could be on Hulu or something, where these folks from the surface will dive down incredibly deep depths.
Yes.
And then come back up again. And you don't have to go through decompressions because there's a reason. And then they're talking about it.
Because
like
science.
Their lungs get compressed down to the size of like a baseball or something. And there's a whole thing to it. And so you can drop down after a certain amount of time and pressure, you get pushed down. So going down is not hard. It's the coming up. So you go down to the depths that you can handle it, and then you turn around and swim up. And it's a monofin. I mean, they're not like kicking both legs. And then they work their way all the way back up to the top. And then the idea is that you set these records. And it's an extreme sport.
Yeah.
And there's a show about a woman diver who set the record with it. And then another woman comes up behind her and she beats her. And eventually there's a special thing. I'm not going to give it away, but blew me away. Absolutely. Yeah. It was like, it's just like I'll run into Alone. I'll watch the series Alone and I'll watch every damn episode going, that is incredible. Like, I can't do that. I do not have the backbone it takes to free dive, whatever, 300 meters down. You got to be out of your mind. But I'm super glad that you can.
Yeah.
So saturation diving, you found out. What other cool stuff? I'm probably getting towards the end of our hour, but what's the other thing that carpenters do that I don't know about? There are carpenter bees. Is that something?
Carpenter bees? I I don't know. I mean, it's just
But I didn't
it's
think
a
you guys
very
built.
wide field.
I thought bridge building was just like another trade. I didn't think that it was.
No, I mean it might be in some places. It's a specialty, and I think a lot of the, so much of construction is just changed, and it's just old habits that, you stick with whatever group and same with steel stud framing, right? And this stuff of like, framers were doing wood, and now it's doing.
Now it's something new,
now
and
it's
it's all powder actuated tools or pneumatics, and so. In your opinion, and you're young ladies, so in your opinion, you've gone into this skill, this trade. You make decent money.
Yep.
You're not carrying any huge debts from school.
No debts
and
at
I
all.
am not an anti-college person, so please don't think that I am. But you chose this path. You don't have any debt. You've got your wood shop. Mm-hmm. You've had tragedy. You've tried different gigs and come through it all. And now you're looking forward at your career.
Yeah.
So for women your age, would you say that this was a hell of a good choice, or did you choose poorly?
No, absolutely. I think it is an amazing choice. And I can't say it's for everybody, right?
No, I agree with that.
If, I've said a few things. If any of the stuff that I, mentioned previously, like you heard that, you're like, oh my gosh, I could never, like, that would make me just wither up. Like, I'd be so uncomfortable. Like, like, if you think you're the type of person who would be just comfortable, like, yes. I'm sorry. I'm trying to think about how to phrase this. It was such a good choice for me.
Perfect.
You
were so enthusiastic.
Yeah.
Enthusiasms. When I met you, you were so enthusiastic about what you were doing.
Yeah.
This is why you're here. This is why I wanted to talk to you. I stumbled into you. I don't know you from Adam's house cat. And I'm like, yeah, I'm over, doing my own thing. You're gonna fix that thing.
I think I was like, what you doing?
Yeah.
Tell me about
Smoke
that.
detector's having an issue, and I got to hit it with a bat. And you're like, what's going on? And I'm like, this, that, the next thing. And you immediately engage me and ask me what is happening. Not what are you doing in my space? What's going on? How does this work? I'm like, wow, okay. We start to talk. You're very open. We communicate for about an hour. I get back to my desk. My head is spinning. I'm like, this is exactly... even though this is not electrical, even though it's electrical, half watt, even says it on my shirt, even though it's an electrical podcast, I have to have you come and talk because you did exactly this in a different trade and are having results.
Yeah.
And it is really important to me. It's like a mission of mine to say, look, if you're a minority or a woman, do look at these trades and please get involved with them. There's 97% of your trade are not you.
Right.
97%. I would think that because you get bids for certain jobs, having minorities and women on board, that you might, not only are you good at your job, right? You also help the company you work for because they say, look, on our payroll, we have added a diverse workforce.
Yep. No, and it becomes, it's a double-edged sword.
It can be.
I remember like walking out of jobs and, not in a mean way, but someone would be like, oh, they need more lady hours? And you're like, no, I'm good at my job. But
the only way you're trailblazer. Yeah. And that is, when I was in the military, there were no women on combat ships. None. They did not serve in combat roles. Okay. First time I saw a woman on a combat ship, my jaw hit the floor. I was like, whoa, that's different. And she wasn't there to a ship's company. She was on like a special assignment. And I thought, why? Like, what the hell? Like, we're not doing anything here any different than anywhere else. I mean, we're all going to get hit with a missile and die. It's the way the game's played. So, now they're completely integrated. there are women all over the place. So
Yeah.
there had to be trailblazers who did that. And you're a trailblazer in this field.
But I don't really think of myself as a trailblazer. I think of the women who
Bat
got in
squeeze.
like
You're absolutely a
20 years
trailblazer.
ago, 30 years ago, and I'm just along for the ride. And honestly,
They may have been the Lewis and Clark,
right.
but you're the Oregon Trail. Okay, you're. How many women do you work with? I have seen 2.
Well, the tin snips got a few.
They're-
No,
Tin bender got one.
Hey, no.
And then I saw a couple of electrician ladies. They're kind of fun.
Electricians, so many ladies.
Electrical trades got a lot of women in
Man.
it. A lot of women in it.
Yeah.
And I get that. But honest to God, how many women carpenters do you work with?
Well, I think currently in my company we've got 3.
There you go. I know.
Well, but like it just, I will say this. Most days I forget I'm the only woman on site.
I bet.
And I think part of that is just force of real, I'm going to befriend the people on this job. It's like, gosh darn it, they're going to like me.
Yeah. And I'm going to take a wild guess that they don't patronize you. They don't. This is a pretty good company you're working for.
Yeah,
So they don't.
No.
They got their act together, as far as I can tell from the outside
Yeah,
looking in.
and I think one thing that really helps is just giving everybody the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they say something and you're like, well, that was, maybe that was patronizing. And like, I'm always just like, nope, that's just what it was. Same with like,
just shrug your
the
shoulders
first,
and move on.
that first day when she was like, don't dress like a hussy. I'm like, I'm sure that came from a place of her really wanting me to succeed. She wanted me to succeed.
Yeah.
And that was how she knew to express it. So like, let's go. Thank you. Thanks for the heads up.
Look, I'm 59. I've been a sexist and an asshat. I've made all the mistakes a guy can make. So I've been there. I get it. But the key is that at some point you learn not to be a clown. And so when I go through, like when I'm teaching, I see the same mix. I see a 97 to 3%, maybe a 95 to 5. Now I'm seeing more women coming through the apprenticeship than I've ever seen before. And a lot of them, when I get to know them, if I do, I'll say, look, it's really critical for me to see you succeed at this. And I've got a young woman that I knew. She worked for a couple different companies, and she worked for me for a while. And we still stay in touch. She'll call me when there's a technical issue, because I always make myself available for my students for technical issues, even if they're working 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 years down the road. I don't give a damn.
Awesome.
And when I had her working for me, we had a special project where we needed some old skills that she had, because she had done fire suppression. And we sent her down to do fire suppression with this guy who'd come up from like another state. And he called me and said, that technician you sent is unbelievably good at this. And I said, you know what? She's training to be an electrician. And he goes, what a crying shame. He says, I mean, I have worked with a lot of people in a lot of states. I've never seen anybody do what she did as fast and as good. She is absolutely unbelievably good at this. And I went, wow, I'll let her know. And he goes, you can do anything you want. I'm just telling you that you should take this product and you should have her work it.
That must have felt awesome.
I was like, dang. So I told her, I says, Cassie, she's, I don't know if I've had her on this or not. I can. I said, Cassie, they love you in this. She goes, I hate doing spray. And I'm like, I want to be an electrician. And she's out doing it. Yeah. She's worked on, we sent her to EST3 school, nailed it. Now she's working for a company doing notifier, which is another big, huge concern. And she's just knocking it out of the park. And you can see it in her. And she's one of a dozen people I've seen. I know by the time I croak, you will all be far enough in your careers that you have made this vacuum for women to come in behind you. That's why I wanted you here.
Oh, I appreciate that.
I'm super happy.
Well, so let me plug the trades real quick.
Do it. Plug the trades.
Okay. I make great money. Carpenter, you can just look it up online. I think I'm at like 43 something an hour.
What?
Plus another like 17 in not bonuses, but benefits, right? Healthcare. I have dental and vision and all that stuff.
So you have
and retirement. I got a pension.
You're in a union, so you've got a pension. You've got
Yes.
health care. You're making 80, 90 grand a year.
Yep.
Plus you get all the union benefits.
Yeah.
And your medical is paid for.
Yeah.
Right? And you got
I'm
retirement.
on a 90-10 plan.
What
It's
does that
great.
mean?
So it means that they pay like 90% and you only pay 10%.
No, that's not how
up
it
to
works.
like
You mean-
23,000 a year.
Do you mean that you pay
2,300.
10% of whatever your medical bills are and that your employer pays the 90?
You're gonna ask me math questions.
No,
Look,
I mean, I'm just saying that's what the 90-10
I'm trying to
means.
think.
It's not the other way around like most people are paying.
yeah, no, the
Most people
employer
pay
pay like 90%. I pay a little bit. Like it's great. I think I have an out-of-pocket max of like $3,000 or something.
Nice.
I don't know, but like it's the education. It was a 4-year apprenticeship. I finished in 3. But you know, like you start off the bat making a living wage. You're making than a lot more than a lot of people do. Your education is paid for. All we paid for was books when we went to class. And it's, yeah, I'm not sitting at a desk all day.
Yeah.
I'm moving. I'm solving problems.
Yep.
I work with my hands. And there is such a cool feeling of, oh, I can build that. I can do that.
I can do that.
Like, you know, there have been times where it was tougher, but I'm so glad of that because, you know, I go through the world and like, you know what, I can handle stuff. Like, it's fine.
Yeah.
Like, I got this. Like, stuff is going to be shitty sometimes, and that's fine. And I feel like I'm a lot less anxious than I was before of, oh, things are, what if something goes wrong? I'm like, I know something's going wrong, and I know I can fix
And
it.
you're not afraid of it.
Right.
So good pay, good health benefits, retirement,
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Sense of
no
accomplishment.
debt, sense
No
of
debt.
accomplishment. You're obviously physically in good shape. You're not broken.
Absolutely.
You don't have a broken back or anything like that.
Mm-mm.
All pretty positive stuff. Any
Yeah.
negatives?
I don't like waking up at 4 a.m.
4 a.m. sucks. I'm
4
there.
a.m. sucks. It's sometimes people are mean to you.
Okay.
That's
That never happens
Yeah,
anywhere
no,
but
I
on
know,
a construction
right?
site. So no one's ever mean to anybody else.
Right. So I mean, it's not even like, it's. Let me think. It can be hard. It can be dirty. It can be frustrating.
Okay. Parking sucks.
Parking is
It's
awful.
terrible. But that just happens to be this facility.
Yeah, well, it's a city in general.
Yes.
Yeah. But I think overall for me, it's been such a wonderful. It has been very good for me.
Excellent.
And I will say I've seen it in just, you know, even if you don't make a career out of it, get your hands on the tools. Like I had a friend, she had just bought a house and they had to do some repairs around the place they had been renting. And she asked me if I would come and change some base that her dog chewed up.
Okay.
And if you ever need to do some work for somebody, she's a great person to do work for because I showed up and she had coffee and pastries waiting.
Oh, the best.
Right, but I brought my chop saw and I had my fancy nail gun, and I was about to start, and she's like, "Well, is there anything you want me to help with?" And I was like, I handed her the nail gun, and I was like, "I'm gonna cut this stuff, and you're gonna nail it." And she
Nice.
hadn't really done anything with tools, right?
So
She
you
was
saw the opportunity to kind of show her some stuff.
So, I did, and it was one of the battery powered Makita
Nice.
finish nailer.
Okay.
Delightful, so much fun to use.
Delightful.
No, honestly, like you just kid at a candy shop, you're like, love it. So I showed her, and she's, she goes from like not touching tools, and then she's nailing base, and she putties it. And I got a text a few days later. She was like, "Hey, what was that nail gun?" And I told her, I was like, "Oh, it's the Makita, this, that, and the other." And it's like $300 plus a battery. It's pricey, so I didn't think she'd go for it.
They're worth it though.
And then like the next week, she texted me. She's like, "Hey, She's like, I replaced all of the base in our new house. I was like, what? And then like the next month, she sent me a picture of a table. She's like, oh, here's the dining room table that I built. I'm like,
dang.
Are you serious? And then like she's showing like, and today, she sends me all the stuff of this projects, and she hadn't touched anything before. And all it took was putting that nail gun in her hand, and all of a sudden she's just figured it out. She can do it.
That is the best way to end this, because you affected her, and now she's moving forward in a skills that she didn't have before you showed up. And
it's not professional for her. It's just, she went to college, she has a good job, but you give some a little bit of, I don't know, just let people achieve something, and they will run with it.
Wow. That should be the name of the podcast, Tyler. Honest to God. Would you come back?
Oh, absolutely.
Even though you gotta get up at 4.
Oh
well. We should probably wind it down.
I know.
Thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you.
It was super special.
I am so glad you let me chat your ear off about fire systems that first day.
If you ever want to learn about fire stuff, I can show you fire stuff till your head pops off. But you've got a good gig.
Excellent.
So thank you for coming in.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Halfwatt Podcast. We always want to hear from you, and we encourage you to email us at halfwattpod@gmail.com with questions or even your own stories. Funny, crazy, or praiseworthy, we want to hear it all. You can follow us on Instagram at halfwattpod to stay up to date on our feed. And be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And share us with a friend, the best way to help us grow. The Halfwatt Podcast is a production of Now Hear This Studios.